Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a great long weekend. We've been doing the panels. Today is going to be more of a fireside chat. And so for all of you watching, if you have program ideas, the club is open to collaboration. You know, our goal is to be timely and thought-provoking. And so we welcome all of you to join us in building these content series. Very excited today to have one of our past fellows join us, Jessica McGlory, and she is joined by Evan Rutchik, Chief Revenue Officer, US for Ogury. And they're going to talk about mobile user trends in CPG. Evan, over to you.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you so much to the Ad Club for having me here for this conversation. And thank you to everybody on the call who's taking the time to join us today after a lovely, hopefully lovely Memorial Day weekend. Today, as Gina mentioned, I'm going to be discussing mobile user behavior trends specifically within the CPG category. But before I jump directly into the content, I wanted to give a quick overview of who Ogury is for those who at this point might not be familiar with us. The company was founded in 2014. Ogury is the creator of what we describe as the first advertising engine actually driven by user choice. And the Ogury advertising engine is fundamentally built on user consent, on preferences towards data sharing and an ad experience, and it's fueled by unique, reliable mobile user and behavior data from over 400 million consented users globally. This data actually powers our user-centric ad formats, whether it be video or high-impact display. And of course, it also powers our unique and award-winning insights, of which I'm going to share a bunch with you today. And of course, I'm more than happy to share more about Ogury at a later time for those of you who might be interested. And as a separate reminder, in the spirit of giving back at this time, I just want to let everyone know that Ogury is actually donating $5 for every attendee of this webinar and our previous Spotlight series. And last week we hosted one that actually was around the pharmaceutical vertical, and we had over 70 attendees and donated nearly $400. And today it looks like we have almost 100 plus. So we get to learn something, give away to a good cause. You know, what a Tuesday we're embarking on right now. But in any case, let's get into it. So today I'm going to kick it off, as I mentioned, by discussing the CPG industry trends at more of a brand level. I'll then dive into the grocery specific landscape, and also we'll take a look at different grocery shopper personas. Now at Ogury, shopper marketing, CPG in particular, are a massive part of our business. You know, we have offices down in Bentonville and also in Minneapolis, and of course New York and Chicago and LA. Atlanta and Texas and whatnot and others, but those two main cities, Bentonville and Minneapolis, to address the direct needs of the CPG clients at those major retailers that might be located in those cities. And to give a more complete perspective, we're having an exciting virtual fireside chat with Jessica McGlory that Gina introduced as well, who's the head of growth at Verb Energy. So I'm really, really excited about that too. So please stick around for it. And a final reminder, we have a Q&A at the end of the fireside chat for you if you have additional questions. So let's kick it off and begin with the CPG industry trends right now. Okay. So as America began implementing social distancing measures, shoppers really began avoiding these brick and mortar grocery stores, right? It makes perfect sense, and turning to online grocery. And you can see here that it's been dominating the headlines quite recently. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's parents are talking about it. Even grandparents are talking about it. That's how you know it's more of a mainstream thing now. And of course, online grocery shopping isn't anything new. It's been around for a while, but it hasn't had as wide of an adoption as it has, of course, in the most recent months. And that's just because we no longer want to browse the store's aisles, right? Instead, we would rather fill up our baskets from the comfort of our couch, minimizing the human contact and having more accessibility in a better experience per se. Right, so online grocery services have enabled us to safely practice social distancing, while of course still being able to access the necessities that we need. We have to eat. So in fact, a report by Red Points and OnePoll shows that shoppers are 61% more likely to buy food and beverage packaged goods products online over fears related to the pandemic. It shouldn't be a surprise. This in turn actually has resulted in a pretty significant increase in online grocery shopping as a whole. Adobe Analytics' April e-commerce report reveals that online grocery shopping is actually up 110%. This is a massive number, right? Not only are shoppers shopping online more, but they're also spending more money and of course adding more and more to their basket. It's not just one-off products anymore. It's a bigger, broader order. Business Insider intelligence report reveals here that there's an increase of 54% in shopper spend on these grocery items during the pandemic, right? It's just an ever-growing trend. And unsurprisingly, all of this demand has actually resulted in an increase in grocery prices, right? The Labor Department reports that prices for groceries across the US are actually increased by 2.6% in April because of the supply chain issues mostly, which is the highest single month bump that we've had since February of 1974. And a big part of that is actually the increase in rising meat prices. So what does this mean for the future, right? To get a deeper insight into the future of online grocery, right? Ogury conducted a consumer attitude survey. We wanted to get an idea and understanding of the long-term impact of online grocery that will have on the CPG world. And we only received the results back last week, so we haven't shared them yet, but I wanted to give you a sneak peek at the results. And we discovered initially that 55% of people who have used grocery delivery services in the recent months plan actually on continuing to use it long-term as their new method of shopping. Sorry for the phone ringing in the back. Hopefully someone answers that soon. Okay. All right, we all understand how huge of an opportunity online grocery is, right? So now we can go a little bit deeper into the data and understand how the grocery landscape has evolved specifically. And we'll dig into some of Ogury's. This is our consented user and behavior data that we have, as I mentioned before. Before we go into these trends that we identified, just to give you a quick snapshot of what this tool is. This tool is called Ogury Active Insights. And it's a proprietary tool that our customers and clients leverage with us, of course. And at Ogury, we're collecting traceable and trusted user consent through our consent and preference management platform that's integrated into a number of different apps. We then start to gather consented signals from these multiple sources, including from our SDK or proprietary survey and others, and we're transforming these signals into unique and reliable data and a true understanding of the mobile user and their journey. And ultimately, this provides a view of installed apps, usage of apps, websites browsed, and demographics. And the Insights tool allows us to visualize these insights and make them directionally actionable. And that's what we're going to walk you through right now. So first, we'll start by taking a look at the overall landscape, right? So this study reflects app and site behavior over a 14-month timeframe, leading up till February 2020. And what we found here is that Walmart tops the list in terms of audience size, monthly downloads, and they have the largest exclusive audience. And the Walmart grocery app tops the list in terms of active users. Now, this demonstrates the intent of a grocery shopper, right? With users actually showcasing high activities, not so much they just own it, but they're actually using it the most, right? And you can see that the exclusivity of this audience, it being at 34% of users only owning one of the apps in the study, whereas 66% of the audience uses more than one app. So there's quite a bit of overlap here to start, but that actually grew. Now look at the same study with the time frame now of March to May, right? When of course the stay at home and the pandemic started to really take shape. You can see that the Walmart app now tops each of the categories, overtaking the grocery app in active usage. And this could be, of course, in part to the fact that Walmart is consolidating the apps. However, despite this though, the Walmart grocery app downloads have increased still, excuse me, as have Target's and also Sam's Club. And if you look at the app exclusivity, we've actually found that it's slightly decreased as users are now turning to more and more apps in order to get their groceries or do their shopping. And this makes it even harder and harder for advertisers or brands to understand who's a loyal shopper to the grocery stores, but it could apply to any number of verticals making the way you communicate to these consumers even more important. And of course, less loyalty demands an increase in your customer focus. So putting that consumer at the center. But getting a better understanding of these behaviors here, if you look at this, it's a month-to-month change in unique users. And on the left, you can see last year, unique users actually shifted. The shift remains pretty consistently low. Now on the right, I've included what this looks like over the last 3 months. And you can see that comparatively, there was quite a significant increase in unique users in April and in May, which does validate the claim that more Americans are turning more and more to online grocery as their new way of grocery shopping. As I mentioned, when grandma's doing it, it's a lot more mainstream. So let's look now, though, at the retention rate among the grocery apps. And I did include Walmart grocery app as opposed to the Walmart app in this watch list, just so you know. And I can share how the Walmart app compares if you're interested as a follow-up. But in April, the weekly retention of Amazon Prime Now and Target apps were much higher than the other apps. And this reveals that these users are more likely to use these apps again within the same week. That's what the retention represents. Now, despite Instacart's weekly retention being lower than the other grocers listed here, the market share of that app has increased by more than 120%. Right? This indicates that users, of course, are downloading alternative grocery delivery tools, but they're still, in some cases, loyal to their favorites. But that's a massive growth of 120% of possession. But how does it compare to May? Right, the month we're in now. So the weekly retention rate has increased on each of the apps, except for Walmart Grocery, which decreased slightly. Costco's retention remained pretty consistent. And this is indicative that shopping really has become the new norm. Online shopping has become the new norm. And despite the fact that some states in the US are currently deconfining, users are still turning and remaining loyal to online grocery. That's an important piece that we'll continue to monitor. Right, so who are these users, though, at the end of the day? Right, now that we have an understanding of the landscape, it's important for us to take a look at the different grocery shopping personas that exist out in the world. Right, so first, we'll take a look at the grocery shopper more broadly, and we'll use this to identify how their behavior has shifted, which will ultimately provide us with a better understanding of the shopper behind the screen. Okay, so I took a look at the grocery shopper as a whole, right? And soon we realized that this was way too broad of a segment. So we layered on some additional points to see the difference between genders and ages. And that's what you can see here, right? In order to keep this high level, I'll just focus on post-mid-March behaviors for these shoppers, which is determined by looking at the discriminant apps and sites that these shoppers now show a high affinity or reach to. Specifically ones that they hadn't shown as much prior to mid-March this year before the pandemic, right? So the female grocery shopper saw an increase in reach or affinity to apps like Savings Star, which is the grocery savings category, grocery rebates, personal care retailers, including Bath and Body Works, and party supply apps like Party City, right? And this, at first, this sort of seemed a little odd to me. But then I thought about how many virtual birthday parties and graduation parties I've actually attended these past few months, and they've all been full of decorations still, right? So this revealed to me that the female grocery shopper, they're still hosting parties, and even if it's within the comfort of their homes, they're still applying they're still out there buying decorations and whatnot and making these special moments, right? So now let's look a little bit at the male grocery shopper, and the affinity is a little bit different, right? So if you look at the affinity or reach after mid-March, we see a pretty big increase in home improvement, including apps like Home Depot, right? Electronic retailer apps like Best Buy, and shopping deal apps like Slick Deals. Now, this reveals that the male grocery shopper still shows an interest in purchasing items, so they're still spending money, but it also shows a pretty strong interest that they're looking to get a good deal, right? So everyone's a little tighter on the wallet these days, so they want to make sure what they're buying fits into their budget. And if you go to the age group now, where you're looking at the below 34-year-old group, we see a pretty high affinity to pregnancy and baby-related apps, right? So Target Registry and Huggies Rewards in the CPG category specifically, and gaming-related apps like Surf Gaming, and knowing the stage of life of shoppers will absolutely better enable you as a brand and as an advertiser to reach them with a more valuable recommendation. So it's not just that they're shoppers, but there's different layers and depth to who these people are beyond the fact that they're shopping. If you take a look at the users above 35, these users actually show a pretty strong affinity to prescription delivery. And they also show an affinity to lower priced grocers, including Aldi, and home decor retailers, including At Home is an app that they're using. Now, this reveals that these shoppers are turning to their devices for medical needs, right? We did a pharma series last week about telehealth, and they're still interested or more interested in home decor, right? So maybe it's a good time for them to update that paint color they've always been wanting to do. You know, understanding these nuances really is a crucial component for you as marketers, or for the brands or the agencies, or even the vendor partners on here, when it comes to effectively reaching these shoppers with your brand messaging, which at this time, especially in this environment, needs to continue to be more tailored and more personalized to that shopper. So these grocery shoppers' behavioral shifts, I think, are pretty interesting. But really what's most interesting is the personas within the grocery shopper category, right? So I actually had a chance, although I do all the time, but I spoke to them specifically, spoke to our dedicated shopper team down in Arkansas and in Minneapolis to get a better understanding of which personas are actually are being requested by the brands and by our teams in kind to understand the most. And they told me that within the last 6 months, in the last few months specifically, the top persona that has been requested to identify and ultimately target with brand messaging might be no secret, but the mom persona. So I went a little bit deeper for the sake of this webinar, and I pulled a study on the mom persona to see how their user behavior actually shifted from pre-March to post-mid-March. And here you could see that, again, through our Active Insights platform, specifically the discriminant behaviors of this audience group, right? And the study that you see was pulled at a time frame before the COVID-19 outbreak, or at least before the stay-at-home orders. And I'm going to compare it to a study comparing behavior after the middle of March as well. And you could see that these users showed a pretty high affinity to pop culture news sites like Pop Sugar. They also had a pretty high reach with gaming content, including 24/7 Sudoku. And they show a pretty high reach and affinity to various family sharing apps like Google Family Link or for children and teens. And let's take a look now actually how this changed after the pandemic and when social distancing measures were put in place. And you can see the shift in behavior is pretty significant. Here we're looking at a 2-month time frame after the outbreak. And you can see that there's now high reach for cooking apps, right? And sites like Martha Stewart and Eating Well. The cooking light and food and wine sites also appear within discriminant apps and sites. We're feeling that these moms are now showcasing a pretty strong interest in recipe and cooking content for the home. They're still engaging with games, right? Games remains pretty consistent. In fact, in many cases, it increases. So the game that we see here, Candy Smash, which I thought was pretty important to note, that it is an area where you can reach this mom pretty consistently, and engagement continues to grow. You can also see that apps like School Messenger have a pretty strong affinity now, which reveals that the mom is not just the CEO of their household, but they're also the headmaster or the teacher or the principal, because they're much more involved in their kids' schooling programs. It tells us a lot, right? This study tells us a lot. And we know that mobile user behavior undoubtedly has changed and evolved in the last few months. But still, we felt like we could go deeper to action more. So we did that with this. So we did take it a step further. And based on these insights that I just shared, as well as insights I shared previously, we wanted to identify these 4 sub-personas as key opportunities for those in the CPG industry, right? So these include the mom turned home chef, right? Or the mom turned school teacher, or the mom turned entertainer, or the mom turned pet mom. So naturally, I wanted to understand their demographics and behaviors in more detail. So we pulled some additional persona slides that might be useful to you all. So on this one, this revealed the variances in their demographics, right? And you can see that the mom turned home chef skews slightly older, with 66% of the users above the age of 35. And the mom turned school teacher skews primarily between 25 and 44. And the mom turned entertainer are primarily below the age of 44. And additionally, 68% of the mom turned pet mom are above the age of 35. So age does play a role. But now what we can do on the next slide here is actually compare their interests. We can determine their interests by looking at the categories for which the persona actually own more apps than the general population, right? And so starting with the mom turned home chef, right? One of this user group's top interest categories is obviously going to be food and drink. And they are 3 times more likely than the general population to own the Food Network kitchen app, right? And this makes sense. Another strong interest category for this group is healthy living. And they're 4.4 times more likely than the general population to own fitness workout apps like Fit On. And as you can imagine, the mom turned school teacher, her top interest now is education. And they're 4.3 times more likely than the general population to own apps like ClassTag, which is a classroom communications app. They also show a pretty high interest in the style and fashion category and are 3 times more likely than the general population to own the Old Navy app. Right? And the mom turned entertainer, her top interest categories are style and fashion, and they're almost a little over 2.5x more likely than the general population to own apps like Sephora. And they're over-indexing with the television category on the whole, and are 1.7 times more likely to own the Disney Now application, right? So, and finally, one of the top interest categories of the pet mom is medical health, with almost 3 times more likelihood than the general population to own the Sleep Booster, Sleep Better app, and 2.7 more likely to own the Teladoc app. So there's a massive increase in the Teladoc space at this point, telehealth. So understanding the persona interest is really important as it provides you with a holistic view of your shopper and a deeper understanding as to what motivates them, what's on their mind, what interests them, and it allows you to be much more accurate in your targeting, right? So once we understand their interests, we can then go deeper into their discriminant behaviors. And in this case, quickly, the mom turned home chef, of course, shows a much higher affinity to recipe and cooking and a much higher affinity actually to travel, including sites like the Travel Channel and health and fitness, as I mentioned, like Fitness Magazine and Shape. The mom turned teacher has a higher affinity towards the Wells Fargo rewards site, which is interesting. I thought it was interestingly apt considering how deserving they are right now of using their rewards, right? They're showing also a massive affinity towards photo printing sites, including Lifetouch and beauty publications like The Revelist. The mom turned entertainer is engaging with fiction and storytelling apps like Radish, makeup subscription services like BoxyCharm, and they're using Popcorn Flicks for kids, right? And then the mom turned pet mom, aside from pet-related content, these users are showing a pretty strong affinity and reach to headache tracking apps like Migraine Buddy, as well as role-playing self-care apps like Self-Care, #Self-Care. This user group also shows a pretty high affinity or reach for video capturing apps like 1 second everyday video diary. But all in all, by identifying the current users and the behavior of these moms and their sub-personas, again, will better inform your activation strategies. Excuse me, a few last slides. Since we looked at all the personas in that sense, we want to look at their demographic breakdown again of the grocery shopper and their user behavior. So we dug into the evolving mom persona. And another very common persona breakdown that we get asked about a lot by our customers and our partners is the behavioral change of the different parenting types. So I pulled a study to look at the behavioral changes of the cost-conscious parent versus the hands-on parent versus the on-the-go parents to see if there was any shift in the behavior after COVID-19. And I also took a look at the shifts in behavior of the dad. Now, I'm not going to go into these insights right now because I really want to get to our discussion with Jessica. But if you would like to know more about these different parenting personas and what the potential behavioral shifts are, feel free to send me an email at evan@ogury.co, and I'll be more than happy to share them with you. And before I get to the fireside chat, I just want to give these last 3 takeaways. The first is that online grocery is here to stay, right, in some capacity. And the ease, the convenience, the connectivity of online grocery channel will result in a long-term, irreversible behavioral shift, and it's time to really embrace it, especially as there becomes an increased reliance on that channel. Secondly, if you want to understand the online grocery shopper, you need to access to unique and reliable mobile data, right? In order to truly know their nuances and behavioral trends, and because it's ever changing, it needs to be updated in more than real time. And third, if you want to reach these users effectively, you really need to focus on implementing an impactful mobile branding experience, ideally driven by user choice. Put the customer in the center of the equation. And since online grocery isn't really just a transaction platform, it has become a brand relationship channel. With these grocery portals, shoppers are still picking the stores they want. They need to be able to trust that there are people who care about their well-being and the quality of their experiences in the store and, of course, online. And this is where mobile really comes into play, which, of course, we can dig into deeper. We'll dig into deeper in our discussion with Jessica. So that's it. But I'm going to unshare my screen, and we'll get this fireside chat started. Thank you so much for the time on this. And if Jessica can join us here, we can get the conversation going. Jessica,
hello.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
Okay. So thanks so much again for joining me today. If you're open to it, let's kick this off by you introducing yourself. Tell us a bit about your role. Tell us a little bit more about Verb Energy. And I'm also curious to know what app you've been using the most since the States went into lockdown.
Definitely. So I'm Jessica McGlory. I am head of growth at Verb Energy, which is a D2C food brand that really believes in making people feel incredible every day. Our first product are Verb Energy bars, which are 90 calories and have as much caffeine as a shot of espresso. We are across a few different flavors. So my role is really making sure that we grow those different flavors, we grow our different products, and get it into the hands of as many people as possible, really. And in terms of everything since kind of lockdown, with like the app I use the most, I mean, like it's probably, I guess, stereotypical at this point, but I do consume a lot of TikTok videos.
Fair enough, as are most, like you mentioned. And I don't think it's fair, actually. I had you put out your app out there, but I have to mention what I've been obsessed with lately. I've been playing, this is kind of embarrassing, but I was told it's okay to say. I've been playing this game called Tennis Clash, which is like one of those build your own character games and you play a bunch of levels and whatnot. But, one of the things that we saw is that a lot of the sports fans, if they're not watching The Last Dance or if they're not watching Tiger and Peyton versus Tom Brady and Phil, they're taken to sports games. And so I've been, I guess, the case study for that specific instance. So Tennis Clash, it's a good game if you want to play against me. Okay.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, fair enough. So I thought it could be interesting for us to have a conversation following, the presentation insights that I just walked through. As because you and Verb Energy offer a pretty unique and fresh perspective to the new frontier of CPG. And I talked a lot about the online grocer or the online grocery store and the consumers that are shopping online in that sense, and how it's impacted CPG from a broader sense. But Verb Energy, you mentioned to me, aren't sold at these grocery stores. So can you talk a little bit about why that is and where shoppers can find your products?
Little.
You there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yep. Did you hear the question? Want me to ask it again?
If you could ask it again, that'd be amazing.
Absolutely. The question mostly is, why is Verb Energy not sold in grocery stores, right? And where can shoppers find your products today?
Definitely. So we are D2C, which is short for direct to consumer. So we really focus on being our owned sort of channels. For our purposes, that means our own website. So we aren't in grocery stores yet. It doesn't mean that we aren't open to the idea of being in different grocery stores. We see that as an amazing brand play where people could be able to see us in the sort of packaging in the sort of way that we like. But for our owned channel, like people could just go to verbenergy.co and be able to buy our bars there, be able to try out different flavors. Like you can try out 4 flavors by just covering the cost of shipping. We really try to make sure that you can have some of the sample experience if you're someone who likes to sample before you buy, or you can just be able to dive right in and see how you like our product.
Excellent. And how are you reaching consumers, right? Of course, in big box, people can walk in and find you that way, discover you that way. How are you finding people? How are people finding you today?
Yeah, so I mean, our biggest channel in being able to find people is actually influencer marketing. We found a lot of success with usually not necessarily with a lot of the celebrity influencers, although we definitely like to partner across the board, but it's a lot of times with those that have pretty strong social media followings. It's pretty easy to tell very quickly if their followers are someone that actually finds them to be influential, or if they're just kind of following them to follow them. But we like to find the influentials that are out there. We also are pretty keen on Facebook ads. For the Facebook ads, it's definitely a huge part of my background, is a lot of paid social. So really try to find people with broad audience targeting, focus more on letting Facebook's algorithm kind of do its thing, but with creative that can really resonate. So we use a lot of the influencer sort of content that the influencers made for their posts to then repurpose it for our ads. So that way people can still learn about the brand in the way that they tend to like to learn about it, and drive to our site. But we really, we're wide open to a lot of things. We're going to be doing a great activation June 1st, for the whole month of June with Green Chef. Going to be doing inserts in their different boxes. We do newsletters. We really like to try to diversify as much as possible. That's kind of my job, was to come in to figure out how we could be a little bit of everywhere from, but still not necessarily in a store.
Gotcha. So a little bit everywhere. It opens up the question. What is your relationship, or what is your, as the head of growth, right? I've seen a lot of CPG companies working with, again, the big boxes. Considering Amazon may be a big box now as well, what is your strategy there? Are you working with them? If no, why not? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Definitely. So at Verb, and really just I think in a lot of the different experience I've had in the past at D2C brands, because previously before this I was at Bombas, really I think that it's opened my eyes to having a huge opportunity of growing out your own website, and growing out your own other channels for growth. Like for us, we have what I call T-commerce, which is just our text commerce, because we're a text-based sort of company. But with Amazon, one of the things that we already know about Amazon, simply because they actually have said it, is that when there are different products sold on Amazon.com, they are collecting the data. There's a lot of different information that brands that post on there can't get. You don't really get to know where different traffic came from to get to land to that site. Was it from an Amazon search or somewhere else? So for our purposes, there's really no plans to work with Amazon now or in the future. The real focus is, how do you build out your actual own channels and see how you can drive people there? And I think beyond really the threat of 2-day shipping, which I will acknowledge is actually really difficult because people do want things right now, and that's hard to compete with a big retailer like an Amazon or Walmart. But that's where quality of product, amazing reviews from your customers, and really just making sure you have a great customer service experience pulls through anything with shipping sort of not being 2 days.
Gotcha. And I want to get back to the T-commerce thing, but just a lot of our clients are working tirelessly to figure out how to address the consumer as it relates to getting them to go shop at a Walmart. Or now with the increase, I think it was 75% growth of Walmart's e-com business over Q1, which is huge growth. How do they get more involved there? And then also with Amazon too. So it's interesting that you're carving out your own experience directly to the consumer and not relying on these other channels. Maybe it's because it's a newer age in this instance, and people are now more comfortable buying things directly in that sense, the advent of DTC. But going back to the T-commerce thing, and maybe this plays, and you can tell us all, owning your own channel, having T-commerce, and T-commerce being text commerce, how does this strategy work for you from a personalization standpoint? It sounds like a lot of what you're doing is trying to carry your experience all the way through and own that experience. Talk a little bit more about why you've done that. How does that really work, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, a great foundation was set up before I even started at the company, particularly by the founders, Bennett, Matt, and Andre. They really had this idea that, like, if you're going to text and you're going to have a text sort of experience, that it should be one that people actually want. There shouldn't be a fight or anything. You know, a lot of times people come in gearing up for thinking they're going to have to fight for something, just to get something corrected. But we really wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So our customer experience team, instead of it being focused on a bot first approach, we really do it people first. So when people are texting that Verb number, they are texting a real person. Sometimes people are very surprised by that and send things that maybe they wish they hadn't after they realize it is a real person. But yeah, for us, we really wanted to make sure that, like, for our brand, even though we might do things that are a little fresher, a little bit different, with, like, not taking ourselves as seriously, having really fun packaging, and, you know, just being a little bit more casual in the way that we address customers, we wanted to still have that, but still make sure that it was something that people felt like, wow, I really, even if they had the worst worst experience, maybe the bars didn't get the right order or something like that, that they would still leave feeling like, I love this brand, because we made sure that from the beginning to the end, we gave them the best customer experience that we could, whether that means correcting something or just always trying to proactively be the best that we can within our sort of space. But we're young and we're growing. We're only a 17-person team, so mistakes are bound to happen, and we don't dwell in that. Instead, we really actually do take it as learnings. When someone types back saying, oh, I'm going to share that with you know, like, they saw something in an ad that confused them, like, oh, I'll share that back with you know, our head of growth. Well, they mean it. I get those pings all the time.
That's very cool. Very cool. And it makes sense, right? More and more mobile usage, people much more comfortable communicating that way. It's a really unique approach. Okay, so you mentioned before, right? Verb Energy is not going to be working with Amazon, possibly longer term for the grocery stores. Aside from those obvious ones, what brand partnership opportunities do you see in your future? And you mentioned one, but are there any others that might be coming down the pipeline for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I really like to try to think of things out of the box as much as possible, really try to challenge the status quo, and do things that might seem weird. So I think with brand partnerships, we're going to be wide open. We'll probably explore more inserts, you know, like, I know someone over, for instance, at BarkBox, and maybe that'd be interesting to get our bars in front of dog owners, because we know that a lot of dog owners really like to be active and like to keep up with their dogs, and what better than a nice little energy bar. But I think that some of the other areas that are going to be interesting is that we know that we can get direct to the consumer, and we can do that very quickly and at scale. And so it's going to be interesting to see, as people continue to get delivery more and more directly to their door, how we can partner strategically with delivery apps to see where we play in. Now it is interesting because we are independent. We're, you know, in food, which is rare, right? I mean, at a certain point, most food brands will end up being a part of a bigger sort of overarching food brand, like a PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, or whatever it may be. And so by being independent, we do have to think and keep in mind of, okay, well, what would this look like if we were in this grocery bag, and would that interact or, like, violate any of the contracts any of those existing players have? So we do think of those things, but really we have been very pleasantly surprised with how receptive people are to wanting to kind of give us a shot. So I'd say I think that as people roll out more into offices, back into their office, hopefully you'll see more Verb in that office. But even without that, we're trying to encourage more businesses to send kind of work from home Verb packages to their employees for a nice little office reallocation of the office snack budget, where they can send a nice caffeine boost for the afternoon. So again, really always trying to retool the way in which people might think of buying food online.
Makes perfect sense. And you mentioned delivery apps. One of the data points that we saw around the quick serve vertical using the delivery apps also is that app possession of these food delivery apps increased by almost 50%, 47%. So there's definitely an opportunity as people start to use these more and more. Excuse me.
Yes, definitely.
So if you don't mind, we'll go back to online grocery. And we know that the adoption has skyrocketed, but if you look ahead, do you think this change in the behavior will have a permanent impact on CPG, maybe for a brand like yours, but maybe for bigger brands as well? Do you see it as temporary, or is it a more permanent fixture as we go on?
I think it's a more permanent fixture. I think what was interesting was that it felt like, at least being in kind of like the kind of underbelly of it all, that it was already festering and it was already kind of happening. This really helped to accelerate it. I couldn't tell you that it's going to have the same accelerated pace where you're seeing some of the numbers that that you posted with your research. It's just that I do think that people are way more open to having CPG come to their home in different ways than ever before. And I think that with a lot of the delivery apps, as they get more accurate, as they start to put in more things within the technology space to make sure that like people are getting exactly what they wanted and things like that, I think that you're going to see it really, really skyrocket. Yeah, if there's any sort of X factor that I think will help us see that this really become a permanent change, it's going to be customer experience. It's going to be customer service. Whoever can really nail that and make people feel good from start to beginning are really going to see the highest amounts of growth.
Totally agree with that. And I would think that even when we are able to go back to brick and mortar, shoppers are still going to be leaning so heavily on their mobile devices because they've become so used to it that these behaviors have shifted more permanently. And I'd be curious to know, for your business, did you see an increase in like a natural increase in subscribership that you would have expected, or was there a much larger growth just simply because of the nature of your business, or just because of as a symptom of the pandemic in some way?
Yeah, I mean, like I was on the camp that thought we were going to grow with the pandemic. It just seemed like something that would make sense. Food and beverage, as it became very clear that so many different places would have to shutter, temporarily close their doors. It was kind of like, well, where else are people going to get their fix? I kind of figured that people would maybe last a week or two cooking and by themselves and constantly making that cup of coffee multiple times a day before they would want to say, okay, no, I'm going to try something else. So that was not really necessarily a big surprise to me how particularly food and beverage online got to see a nice bump. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, the size of the bump, I think surprised our team overall, though, as being something like, okay, we're very fortunate, we're very lucky, but what do we do to make sure that we can manage the scale and really make sure that people are having that sort of still great experience?
Awesome. Okay, I have one more question and then we'll go to the Q&A. We're getting a bunch of questions in right now. In today's digital economy, giving shoppers choice and control over their advertising experience, we think is not only the right thing to do, but it's also, in many cases, a legal requirement. And like you kind of said, it's imperative for business success to be part of that, to create a better experience for the consumers overall. So what are you guys doing to ensure that you're providing shoppers with this control over their data?
Definitely. So from our sort of point of view, being able to switch over to instead of having that login account online and forcing people to sign up for an account and kind of instead of doing that and focusing on people just being able to do texting, where they get to control the conversation, they get to respond or not. When we say, do you want to skip, cancel, pause in the text very clearly, the next shipment, 2 days before it even ships out. Since we are primarily a subscription model, there's no having to dig through your email to find what email you're supposed to address by X amount of hours before before they can even cancel. It's all right there where they can literally just say, hey, I want to cancel. And we're like, okay. And that's pretty much it. So I think that being able to have that much sort of control actually kind of confuses a lot of our different users.
It's not like canceling cable where you have to call 1,000 times. Okay.
Exactly. It's so quick. And so for a lot of the different data, we really do try to focus on being transparent and really letting them know as to why we have certain things kind of going through. We don't really do any marketing across our text sort of channel. Biggest marketing would probably to say, hey, we have a new flavor, but otherwise that kind of like 24-hour sale thing, we don't really do. We really want to make sure that people feel safe with us, that they enjoy our experience. So at every opportunity, we try to make sure that they know that we're not selling data. We're not doing any sort of odd data plays. It really just kind of comes down to, if it's something that we think is beneficial to them, that they would like to see, then we want to try to make sure it's in front of them, but nothing more, nothing less.
Very cool. Okay, great. So we'll take a few questions from the audience here. First question, totally understand your approach with Amazon, but what's your plan with scaling up?
Yeah, so scaling up, I mean, like, I think I feel pretty fortunate. I will say that because I come from Bombas, which, if anyone watched Shark Tank, they just did their update there. I think, like it was over like the course of the history of the company, like over 225 million in sales. And that was only direct to consumer. Less than 1% comes from wholesale. And I got to see that you can scale up a company online and get pretty dramatic scale. So you can see what you can do, what you've seen. So since I saw that and kind of saw how they went about it, it's a completely different business when I'm in now, but it has given me the confidence to really understand that the way to do some of the scale that I'm thinking of will be primarily, one of the first things that I said to the founders was I was like, it's very important that we make sure that our marketing is profitable. And not only is it profitable, but including all inclusive. So not just ROAS, so not just return on ad spend, but how do we get it so that we're returning all of the money back from the sale of the bars? Because, you can obviously get a lot of direct traffic. You can get things that are, kind of free traffic, but and that helps subsidize the paid. But if you're able to make your paid really work for you, you can scale quite nicely. So it's going to be a nice focus of mix probably between influencer marketing, more paid social ads, trying to be efficient and testing out new things. We actually, had recently just starting to test out a launch of a starter kit where people would be able to get a whole bag and try out 4 different flavors for $15 and seeing how people respond to that, which has been very positive. But really not being afraid to just test and iterate. Like that experience that I told you about, we literally built it in about 2-3 weeks, just by kind of going in, getting out an MVP and seeing how people respond. So our scaling is really going to come down to getting some of those fundamentals right and kind of going from there. But one of the key tricks also to scaling is that you got to have a great product. That's the other thing I'm spoiled on. Bombas are great socks, and Verb Energy has great energy products, obviously including these bars. So having that great product is going to help scale because more and more word of mouth starts to get it out there.
Awesome. Okay, another question. What do you anticipate will make the biggest impact to your marketing budget in the next 6 months?
Gotcha. In the next 6 months, I think the biggest impact is going to be, I've been thinking a lot about how brands are going to go into Q4 since so many suppress so much spend kind of leading up to Q4. It seems like there's a lot of brands that are suppressing marketing spend across quite a few sectors on Facebook particularly. So I think Q4, we might see the most expensive Q4 of all time when it comes to trying to do customer acquisition. And I think that's going to impact our budget probably most dramatically. I think there'll be a big shift in my focus into really seeing how we can bolster our efforts with PR, with referral sort of marketing of our customers doing referrals for us and seeing how we might incentivize them even more, and seeing how we can get maybe other forms of ways of growth like gift cards or something that can be able to scale a little bit more, because spend in Q4 will probably be pretty expensive.
Okay, great. What technology do you anticipate will impact consumer CPG purchasing decisions in the near future?
Got it. I mean, I'm probably biased, but I do think it actually is SMS. I mean, it's something where, you're seeing it more and more. Obviously we do text-based sort of commerce. Dirty Lemon. There's a lot of different brands out there that are in the D2C space that are really starting to take SMS quite seriously and realize how much you can scale on the channel, and how many people are starting to prefer it as a way of getting instant communication versus some of the other channels like, email or phone call. So I think that we're going to start to see a lot of the players maybe get in there, maybe more of the mid-range. I don't know. There's a lot of big players that just got into D2C. It was very exciting and interesting to see pantryshop.com by Pepsi and everything. But I'm going to be really excited to see more and more go into the SMS space and see where it goes.
All right, cool. What is the thing that surprised you the most about consumer behavior during this time, if anything?
Sorry, it cut out for me.
Sure. Yeah, I'll ask it again. What is the thing that surprised you, again, if anything, that surprised you the most about consumer behavior during this time?
Got it. I think that it surprised me the most about consumer behavior. I was intriguing, but also great to be able to see that there is still spending kind of happening across the e-commerce space, and people were still willing to, maybe buy some of the clothes that they wanted, and, things of that nature. So that was pretty surprising.
Great. Okay, this might be the last question. Aside from paid social, you mentioned, and influencers, what channels are you looking to test next?
Got it. So looking to test next, I mean, I'm definitely, I'm excited to expand even more into newsletters. I think we've really only dipped our toes, and I think there's a lot there, but I also want to just do things that aren't really being done at all. There's not much whitelisting that's happening and co-marketing much anymore that you're seeing through. I think that publishers particularly have this very unique sort of capability to be able to run through their sort of social channels and say how they've partnered with the brand to talk more about some of the different but doing it with more of an editorial twist on it. Obviously still making sure people know that it's sponsored, because that's important and it's more honest, but letting people know that instead of just saying, hey, try this out, getting the editorial spin in ads, I think is something that hopefully we see a lot more of. But more and more I talk to publishers, the more that they're oh, I've never done this. And so, but I think that could be a huge opportunity. So I'm probably going to play around a lot with some Facebook whitelisting ads and see what I can do there.
Awesome. It's very interesting, to hear your strategy. You definitely have an advantage in owning your own data, understanding the e-commerce experience. A lot of our customers, especially in the shopper marketing space, they're limited because they don't have access to the data at Walmart or the data at Amazon, as you mentioned. And so they have to get as close to the sales they possibly can and make optimizations that way, whereas you're able to see that. And at Ogury, we're helping our clients do a lot of that with partnerships with third parties or some products that we've rolled out that can do that, get as close to the sale as possible. But it's cool to see your approach here. Thank you so much for doing this with us. I know, again, everyone's busy coming off the holiday weekend and whatnot. For everyone out there, please, feel free to reach out to me or anyone from Ogury, of course, to learn more. Jessica, is there anything else you want to make sure everyone knows about Verb, yourself, before I make my last announcement?
So when it came to the pandemic and everything that happened, it was really important to us not to just think about like, oh, wow, well, we're seeing all this growth, so we should just kind of like capitalize on it as much as possible. No, it really became a mission of ours to focus on how can we get and extend ourselves as much as possible. Again, we're a 17-person team who came together and was able to get 500,000 bars out. So that's something that we're particularly proud of, and hope that people know that another key important part about being a brand during these sort of times is really trying to see how much can you extend yourself out as much as possible.
That's awesome. Thank you again so much. Just so everyone knows, we are going to be sending out this recording as well as the insights on all the Ad Club channels. And also as a quick follow-up, we have like a giveaway winner thing where we're giving away $250 to someone on the call for Instacart. And we added a $250 giveaway of a Verb Energy Bundle, because why not? We got to support our partners over here. So thank you again for all the time, and I'll pass the mic back over to Gina.
I just wanted to say thank you for such a great conversation. There were so many incredible insights and all those forward-thinking ideas. Thank you so much, both of you. Our next webinar is going to be on June the 2nd. It's with Sandra Sims-Williams from Nielsen and our board chair, Lee Nadler from Sherpa Marketing. I want to apologize for some of the sound issues today. We will make sure that we get to that. But most of all, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and hope you have a great rest of your day. See you next time.